something, huh? A little something, something about lyrics that I wrote for the album To Save Ourselves by Dendron. That's us. I'm Peter. I'm Dad. And like I said, man, I spent way too much time just slaving away at the lyrics on this album for nobody to ever notice or understand any of it. So I'm gonna give you a brief overview of most of the lyrics on this song. I'm not going to be going in depth. I'm not breaking down every line. I just kind of want to give you a kind of guide to look through and be like, oh, okay, now I get it. So, first, before I even do anything, let me explain what this album is about. It is simple. Each of the songs on this album is one of the 5 steps that I think people, or at least I go through, when you realize that you have a bad habit, or maybe not necessarily a bad habit, but something that you know you should be doing that you aren't doing. Maybe somebody would still say that's a bad habit. I don't care, right? Like how is not going to the gym a bad habit? It's not like a hat. Well, no, okay, no, I get it. Okay, yeah, yeah, that's a bad habit. Okay, either way. This is about bad habits. So here's the steps, the grand realization process. Song 1. Song number 2, getting viscerally upset at yourself for letting yourself develop a bad habit. And then once you calm down, you hit step number 3, song number 3, which is a strong determination to change your behavior. You can do better, right? And that is generally followed by song number 4, a period of time where you do pretty well. You actually follow through with your good habits. All is hunky dory until you slip up. And maybe you slip up a couple times. And then all of a sudden, you find yourself at number 5, back down in the hole. You are exactly where you started, and now you have to reconcile with what just happened. So, let me give you a couple little kind of parts to this album, a little overview, a little guide to this album. So one thing, I spent a long time making sure that there was nothing on this album that would make you think uh, what kind of bad habit I'm talking about. Right. And what I mean by that is I mean that you can take whatever you're dealing with right now and apply it to the album, and it is so unspecific that it should work, right? That you can apply your own experience to it no matter what said habit is. The only thing, the most that I ever tell is that I imply in 3% that your bad habit is hurting your relationship with others, or maybe at least has the potential to do so. That's as specific as I get. So you should be able to take anything and just put this on that album. Um, the other thing is, let me just talk about the point of references, because I say I, you, we, I do all kinds of stuff. Let me kind of give you an overview of what I'm thinking. So this album is a self rant. You're ranting at yourself, right? About your bad habit. I find when I'm upset at myself because I've done something in the past, I always speak to myself in like not the third person, but I say things like, "Come on, Peter, man, you can do better than that." That kind of thing, right? I'm saying you, even though I'm referring to myself. Generally, I'm talking about my past self. So when I say you on the album, generally I'm referring to your past self in these angry moments, or sometimes I am referring to a kind of certain part of the brain. I'll get back to that in a second. When I speak from the first person. I say, uh, I can do this, me, that kind of thing on the album. Those are in the more lucid moments, the more thinking moments where maybe you're not so upset at yourself anymore, and you're just kind of saying, I can do better. Like, I can do this. I can do this. Um, then there are a handful of points in the album where I say we. I am implying that we are going to get together and solve said issue. And the reason I say that is because this kind of comes back to what I was saying a minute ago. A lot of at least 3% specifically, and other parts of the album is getting upset at the kind of animalistic part of the brain, right? The part that says, go eat, I don't care if you're full, eat that other cupcake, it's delicious. That part of the brain, which that's a lot of work. Like the bad habits often stem from this part. So when I say you, sometimes I'm referring to that part of you that says, hey, the reptile brain, the just give me sex and food part of the brain. Right. Sometimes I'm referring to you. And when I say we, oftentimes what I'm saying is we as a whole brain. We have to acknowledge the whole brain and we have to work together as a whole mind to get where we need to go. Right? Because I think ignoring that part of your brain or trying to downplay it or be like, I'm bigger than just wanting food is silliness. everybody is kind of at everybody is at the mercy of that part of your brain. Let's say. Okay, and then there's a handful of times throughout the album where I speak from no perspective. One of them is right at the beginning of the album. Sat so still, catching a glimpse of it, whirling by, let it go, leave it to fly. All of that, there's no perspective. I'm not saying me, you, anything. Those are supposed to be the more meditative moments where you're kind of taking your ego away from the situation. And then there's a handful of points on the album where I speak from this like non-perspective, right? Where I don't say me, you, we. It's just, like I said, sat so still, catching a glimpse of it, whirling by. No, cool. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have to say about the kind of general overview. Let's kind of get into each of the songs, and I'll give you kind of like an overview of my thought process here for each of them. So, dodging glances. This one all the way up until the chorusy part, right? The part that goes, "Come and see you couldn't be, it wasn't me, I must have been thrust." Everything up until there is this kind of um, realization process mixed with this like kind of coming to terms with the fact that you had this thing that you were doing that was not good, and you probably should have been able to figure out that it was not good, but you did not put any attention into it. You subconsciously, semi-consciously kind of turned a blind eye to the things that you were doing wrong. Um, and it's pretty much exactly that right up until the chorus where we kind of get to a point of denial. And I understand that it's like one of those stages of grief, but that's not what I'm trying to do here at all. But that is oftentimes how I react initially. Anytime you get called out, even if you call yourself out a lot of times, you'll be like, no. No, the only reason that I was being an asshole was because whatever, right? Whatever you want to justify it as. Right. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for Dodging Glances. Straightforward song. When we hit 3%, this is when your denial phase is kind of over, and now the finger is just kind of pointing at you, and you gotta go, okay, this is my fault. This is my problem. And most of 3% is kind of like I implied earlier, or like I said earlier, it's mostly getting really mad at yourself and also the animalistic part of the brain that drives you to do nasty things, getting upset with this. Um, and that's pretty much it. It's a lot of kind of questioning things, questioning how much control you have over your actions, these kind of things. Um, and it eventually gets to the point where the song kind of drops off a cliff, where it's just like a drums and bass for a second. Pretty much everything after that is looking at this more in a matter of fact manner, like a yeah, okay, so there is a part of me that's going to want to do things that might not be beneficial, and I just got to deal with that. There's always the lizard brain saying sex food, that's all that matters, right? That's always going to be a problem. So it's kind of looking at that more in a matter of fact, and then also coming to terms with the fact that everybody struggles with these things. It's not just you. Don't worry about it. um, yeah, that's pretty much it for 3%. There's also a talking bit at the end that's kind of talking about like uh, it's a good analogy for the mind, right? It's a snippet from Michael Pollan. He's a writer, really cool dude. Anyway, then we hit Pull Guard right in the middle of the track list, and Pull Guard is like I said, that big desire to change. Most of the first half of the song is kind of set up, kind of coming out of the 3% kind of vibes, and then we get to this point where it's like what is like the kind of precipice? I say it very bluntly. It's like I say like I'll rebuild the habit and reroute, stomp it out. Yeah, rebuild the habit. Just sometimes I think personally, with lyricism, you just want to be blunt. Just be blunt about it. Um, anyway, so most of the song up until that point is just kind of this build up. of kind of getting to the point where you're like, okay, no, I am going to change. This is it. And then right after that part, we get one of my favorite parts on the album lyrically, which is this little section that kind of, it really kind of sums up how you feel in this moment, which is like, you know, if I just kind of seen everything how I see it now, I wouldn't have had this problem, right? I would have had this totally under control. It's just because I never seen it in the right light. No, now I wouldn't let this happen. Right. Um, yeah, so there's a whole section of that, and then that's followed by just like, I don't know, really aggressively, like, we're gonna do this, like that kind of thing. And then we hit refrain, and this song, man, this song is from a lyrical standpoint, pretty simple. It is do the thing, you're doing a good job, keep doing the thing. I know it's monotonous, but just keep going. And I guess to point out like the more interesting part of the song is there is a point in which this song where you slip up, and I literally say like uh, you got a little carried away, right? And that part of the song, you can actually hear it. Everything shifts from following the bass. So the vocals and the drums were following the bass during that section, which is it has 8 beats, and then all of a sudden everything just goes and starts following the guitar, which has 5 beats. Right, because most of the song is polymeters. It's actually a really dumb song. Um, but yeah, from a lyrical standpoint, it's this like keep going, you got this. You slip in, don't let yourself slip. Oh shit, you slipped. Uh-oh. And then the ending of the song is very straightforward. It basically says it right there. You got up on the horse again, but you couldn't seem to stay there, right? I find usually it's not once that you fall in these situations, it's a couple times. You're like, I won't go to the gym today, I'm tired. And then all of a sudden next week you're like, here's another day I'm tired. And then 2 weeks from there you're like, yeah, maybe not this day either. And then all of a sudden you're not going at all, right? That's kind of the way it normally goes. Um, and then we hit the epic Cambyses, and I'm not going super in depth with this because it's just too long, man. But I'll kind of summarize it. The first half, the first very aggressive half of the song is mostly just mad desperation, like you gotta get back to the top, like you got a lot to lose. Like there's some lines here that are just again very straightforward, just like trying to get the emotions of that, like yeah, that desperation. You're there like, how could this happen? I let myself slip again. Oh my god. And you're there and you're just it's a lot of metaphors of trying to like crawl yourself out of something. And then after the song starts to chill out, we get one of these sections that has like no perspective again, right? What does it say? It's safe to say the will to rectify and change will fade, right? Again, that's pretty straightforward. And then after that, it's more so this reconciliation of a few things. That one, really hard to change your behavior, really difficult. We are creatures of habit, right? Two, try not to beat yourself up so much. Try not to do too many things at the one time, right? Um, and yeah, just there's a fine line between going easy on yourself and making sure that you're still putting in an effort. Because if you don't try at all, you're never getting anywhere. If you don't try, I mean, that's literally that is it. You will stay the exact same. You're not gonna accidentally just one day be like, oh, I quit smoking. Like I did it. I just did it. What? Like I just stopped. I didn't even realize. Like yeah, not gonna happen. Anyway, and I guess the last thing I'll say is that I like the ending of this album because the song starts very aggressively and then it chills out for a while, but then it ends aggressively too. There's this section that happens right before um, what we call the equator was when the song shifts from being very heavy to very clean. If you've heard the song, you know what I'm talking about. It's a very clear, just cut off. The riff that came right before that, we always call it it's the doing it riff, right? And that comes back right at the end, and there's a bunch of like yelling over it and just random screaming. And I like to think you're doing it again. That's the ending. The ending of the album is just very like not melancholy, worse than that. It's bad. You're there and you're about to slip right. You're just diving right back down into the hole. Do it again. Yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much an over. Like, I don't want to go in depth. I've never wanted to sit there and go through every single line of my song and be like, this is how you interpret this. A lot of the stuff is like there to try to let you put your interpretation on it. And then obviously I went over some of the more like in your face, straightforward lines. Um, but yeah, no, that's kind of a an overview, and I'm just gonna say it. I'm very happy with this album lyrically. I kind of got away from writing a lot of cheesy stuff. I used to, even listening to my lyrics from back in like 2016, I'm just like, oh man, Peter, you didn't have it quite then, man. Very happy with this. I'm happy with how it came out, and I wish I could tell you more about how this idea developed because to be honest with you, it morphed over time. It was always this thing about bad habits or the struggle to change. It was always about that, but the way I had it structured and everything slowly changed over time, and I can't even remember what the original sort of ideas were. I think it was like there was like two halves to it. Anyway, I can't remember. This is the final product, and I'm just thinking like now while I'm trying to like think up. I know what I want to talk about for the next album, but man, like it's gonna be hard to follow how crisp and clean I think this came out from a lyrical perspective. Anyway, thank you for listening. Bye bye.